Right. Anyway, let's do this.
Yes, let's do a podcast, Chris. I've lost my notes, so that was build up for nothing.
Keep that in.
Jesus. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar, a show where the host definitely doesn't misplace his notes 10 seconds before he's due to start.
That happened.
This week we are taking a look at the Waterbending Scroll, which is an episode in which Aang and the gang, the Aang gang, steal a Waterbending Scroll from some pirates who chase him down, end up teaming up with Zuko, big old fight, they escape. Summary done. Chris, what do you think?
I can't remember whether did you say you had an opinion? I remember you dropping a hint about your view on this one at the end of last week. So
it wasn't. No, it's an upcoming one. It's not this one. It's an upcoming episode. My least favorite episode, maybe of the show, is not the next one, but I think maybe the one after. I can't remember exactly where it places. It's one of the next couple. This one's. I think this one's like fine. Like it's not great, but it's like it's good.
Well, I really enjoyed it, but I got a lot of nitpicks. It's a nitpick week, and I'm happy to be previously with Avatar when I've given nitpicks. You've presented an alternative argument, and I've come round. So I'm not even. They're not even criticisms; they're nitpicks.
Welcome to Chris's Nitpick Corner. This week, sponsored by tea. I'm drinking my tea. Enjoy.
You got a big
tea.
cup?
I've got it's a big cup. It's the sort of cup that if you clock someone around the head with it, they would probably die.
Wow, that is the
size of the cup I have. Like
you
if Macaulay Culkin had this cup in Home Alone, those criminals wouldn't have got very far.
You can tell that neither of us feel there's too much to say about this episode. And what I love about that tea exchange is all the people that listen to Stephen University and quite like it have gone, there it is. There it is. There's the tangent bollocks. All the people that are enjoying this and don't listen to anything else we do are like hearing us talk about you killing someone with a cup of tea going, what is this? What are they doing? Like...
So good, but the problem is, it's such a hard balance. And like, can I lay my cards on the table a little bit now?
Here we go, SU fans, analysing our own podcast on the podcast. It's Chris and Dan Gold.
Very quickly, just to hit the trifecta of
it's never quick, Dan.
Tangenting and then analysing the tangenting. We've tried to be focused on this, but it is a difficult balance because focused can sometimes mean dry. and I sometimes worry that we've been drier on this than maybe we have been on a previous podcast, and that the balance has been slightly off. You know, because we've been we respect the show, we respect the fan base, and we really want to take it seriously and discuss it properly. But we're also idiots that like to make stupid jokes about teacups big enough for Macaulay Culkin to tie a string to, swing down a set of stairs, and hit Joe Pesci in the head. Because we're idiots. So it is the eternal struggle of the Avatar podcast, but we don't know where the balance is. Because the difference between this and Steven Universe was, you didn't care about that show when you started, which gave us immediate free reign to be dickheads. But we've both come into this with a little bit of like respect that has caused us to have a constant dilemma of making stupid jokes and analysing this show. And I don't know where the answer is, Chris. I don't. So there you go. Cards off the table. I've put them on. You've seen them. I've taken them back. They're in my pocket. Let's move on.
Phil, for just a second more on give me your thoughts, because I'm just double checking something. Give me your thoughts on the episode just very quickly, and then we'll get back to nitpick corner.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so with this episode, I think it is a good episode, but it is hampered by a lot of tiny issues or tiny inconsistencies, like Katara's gripes. It feels a little out of character for Katara to be so jealous of Aang. So there's a few moments in this where you go, really? Like, you know, I mean, he's so nice about it. Like when she says, she says like because he picks up the waterbending really quickly for those who haven't seen this episode recently, and it took her months to figure it out, and he does it in like 2 minutes, and she's like annoyed, and he says, well, you had to figure it out all on your own. I've had a great teacher. And it's a really sweet moment, and it's a very nice thing for Aang. Like he's that's clearly him being the peacemaker again. That's his monk training kicking in. Obviously he sees things from that perspective. But like that's such a nice thing to say. Katara's still shitty with him, and I don't know. There's some Katara's jealousy in this episode is hard to track because it flicks back and forth, and it makes the episode feel a bit uneven, even if it isn't. I prefer cleaner character stories where it's a lot more obvious the exact journey they're going on for the exact reasons, and when you muddle it by having Aang be that nice bag, it can cause some confusion. So while I enjoy this episode, it's got some of my favourite jokes from the show in it. I wrote a couple down. There's some amazing jokes in this episode. The character stuff's a little inconsistent for me, and it makes it a little bit harder to enjoy. It's also a kind of frivolous episode in many ways. Which straight after that setup is kind of like we're on a timer. Let's immediately stop to play in the water. I know they make the point of no. He don't play in the water, Aang. We're here to learn waterbending. But wouldn't it be more efficient to just go straight to the North Pole where you can be taught waterbending properly? Stop it.
Oh no, I've got almost the opposite problem in terms of that.
Right. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, then, yeah. So, what, out of curiosity, what there was the thing you're looking up? Have you figured it out?
Yeah. I was just double checking. I think I'm right here. I just suddenly realised it's episode 9 and we're launching end of October. So I think I'm right in saying that for Patreon users, it's the 22nd of December. So Merry Christmas before Christmas, which is in a couple of days. And for everyone else, it's the 27th of December. So I hope you had a good Christmas.
Oh, that was nice of you to work out. I hope you haven't worked that out incorrectly.
I think I'm right. Well, you can double check my maths, but if it launches on the 27th for Patreon, 9 weeks after that, as far as I can tell, it's the 22nd. So yeah, I think I'm right. Unless I've counted unless I've gone 27th a week later 1 and put the 1 in the wrong place. But even if I've done that, then it means I'll be right for someone. It's nearly Christmas, so yeah.
That's great.
So
allow us
some
tangents. I can have a quick look and see if I get to the same conclusion as you. When are we launching this again? Did you say
27th?
That's right, isn't it? Yeah. So 27th. So 27th on the Patreon. So 27. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, you're right. You're exactly right. So for those of you here on the Patreon, I hope you have a good Christmas. And for those of you who listen to us on other audio platforms and YouTube and stuff, I hope you had a good Christmas and a good New Year. Although I think historically, for me at least, New Year's Eve has pretty much always been a bust. I don't know why people bother.
And Dan's imparting that on you.
Well, no, I just mean like there's always too much expectation on the evening, and it never lives up to your expectation of the evening. It just can't. Yeah. So there you go.
My favorite way to spend New Year is well. Probably can't do this year, but anyway, it's pick like 2 friends and have the evening in with them eating food and playing games.
Yes,
that's my favourite way to spend a New Year.
Yes,
but this year will probably be that, but on people's own because we might not be allowed to celebrate together.
We could do the evening on Zoom together, Chris.
I'm not doing that. That definitely sounds like that would be depressing. Just me and you on Zoom.
I thought it'd be nice, but okay. Huh? I thought that sounded nice, but that's fine.
I'd love to chat, but I'm just not sure about you and me staring at each other via Zoom.
Just thought, we could both separately order pizza.
You're making me feel bad now. I'd love to speak to you. I think we often do speak on New Year. But
I'm just making you feel uncomfortable now for the sake of it. Right, focus. This is where we've gone too far, Chris. Focus on the episode.
Yeah, but that's
Chris's
why
nitpick corner. Well,
that's why I checked it out, because I figured people forgive us because it's kind of Christmas. So I always think the opposite, because I think it's slightly, and I know waterbending's complicated and you can make an argument against it. But I think it slightly downplays the premise and the intensity of last week's cliffhanger to have Aang immediately pick it up and then discover an instruction manual. And you could even go like, oh yeah, but there's loads of moves in the instruction manual. Yeah, but he looks at one once and picks it up. So I just think and I know it's more complicated than that, and there's more to it than that. But I was like, but one of my first nitpicks is I was like, this lessens it somewhat. Like, because you're literally like, God, how is he going to manage this? How is he going to master all these things before summer? And then you're like, oh, well, he's mastering waterbending pretty quickly, isn't he? So
yeah,
it might be all right.
That is a concern. I think there's an in-universe explanation for why he's picked it up quickly, and there's a difference, I think, in the show, and I think they've kind of let themselves down by not really explaining this, but learning how to just waterbend, like just physically, just move water, is not the same as mastering waterbending. It's a bit like the difference between being able to stand on a skateboard, learn how to balance on a skateboard, and move on a skateboard, versus what a professional skateboarder can do, tricks and movements. And so Aang learned how to get on the skateboard this week, and he even might have learned how to ollie. But he's like, the world of waterbending is, when you see people who can waterbend later in the show, like trained, you'll realize how much more scope there is to waterbending than we're getting here. He's just moving water about. The water whip is actually a pretty low level waterbending move. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. A bit like, remember when we saw Boomy doing earthbending?
Yeah,
and he was able to like make rocks come from the ground. But he could create encasings around Aang. He could like bring up spikes and all this stuff. This is the equivalent to Aang just being able to move the earth.
Yeah,
he's not learned all of the
enough.
complex stuff yet. So the show hasn't done a particularly great job of explaining that. But the closest they got was what Roku said last week, which is that, most avatars take, many years to master. And he used that word, master, the elements.
I think for the uninformed new watcher, that could be clarified more in this.
100% more. I agree.
Because you are a bit like...
It was equally a concern for me the first time I watched it. It's not come up since as a problem for me because I kind of understand now the difference. But I 100% agree with the criticism. I think it's with the content you have, with just episodes 1 to 9 and nothing more to fill it in, that does seem weird. And it does. I could totally see somebody watching that and going, well, okay, he's figured out waterbending. All right, we'll fire next. There's also a secondary explanation to why waterbending is so easy for Aang, which is that it is the most similar technique-wise to airbending.
Yeah, because even part of me was like, surely he can fake this by making some air go underneath the water and lifting that.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he absolutely could. But I mean, in terms of waterbending, the techniques the waterbenders use and the movements they use to make waterbending happen are similar to the airbending ones. And I think he literally says, you have to shift your weight through the stances. Because because you got to remember that compared to Katara, he's actually been trained to bend an element already.
Yeah.
So he understands about the movements and how they interact with what's actually happening. So he's got a leg up already, in terms of that. I will tell you now that they sort of waterbending will be the easiest of his journey. And obviously we'll come to that later on. But yes, mastering it is still very different to just being able to physically do it. And while the show hasn't clarified that yet, that is the case. But I agree with you. I could see it definitely taking the tension out of it for some people.
Yeah. I think there's a hell of a lot of coincidence in this episode. From little things like the knives happen to fall during the fight in a way that means Aang and Sokka can immediately escape and get their bounds taken off and stuff like that. I enjoyed...
Well, just even Zuko stumbling across them. He just
that
happens
was my
to go
next
to the
one.
same merchant.
And I enjoyed the humour in Grandad Fire Dude, having to, or Uncle Fire Dude, sorry, like buying all that stuff. And I found that joke really funny where he's like, well, you know what they say, better than finding something you're looking for is finding all this for a good bargain.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
literally the scene when they're in that place and the guy's like, well, we let the water tribe go and that strange little monk get away, and Fire Dude's like, huh? Like, I was like, oh, come on, couldn't you have just had them trailing them like that? Would, because you still probably huh?
I was going to say, the script is doing so much heavy lifting to make that make sense. It's really forcing that information through.
Yeah, exactly. And because the thing is, you could, other than the joke at the end where he's like, it was in my pocket the whole time, you could even still do, they're tracking them, they go to that place, they can't find them, and then he says, oh, well, you know what they say, what's better than not being able to find something you're looking for? Finding all these bargains. Like, you could have even done that joke still. Yeah. Like, they've been tracking them every other week. Why this week was there a convoluted, coincidental reason for them to go there? And then they happened to find them. So there was that.
Yeah,
this
is his White Lotus tile for his Pai Show game. So the White Lotus tile, there is relevance to it later in the show, but it's not direct. There's an indirect reason they've established what that is here.
Oh, okay.
It's not. There were easier ways to do it, and less convoluted ways to do it. But I will say it wasn't completely in aid of nothing. There is the idea of this sort of very unsuspecting tile that people write off as being useless and not particularly a prevalent part of anyone's strategy in Pai Show, but actually the strategy that he particularly enjoys using involves it, and it catches people off guard maybe, and the relevance of that later is specific, and specifically they use that the words White Lotus do come back up. It's so, but there were simpler ways to do that. He could have done it like a proverb in one of the other episodes without actually then having to have a story about him chasing it down and then finding it in his sleeve. I totally agree. Like it's unnecessarily convoluted, and the script almost buckles under the weight of just really forced ways to get people in the same place.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
And like I say, because there's a point where when the scroll falls into the kind of the black dust of the pirates produce, I was like, well, Sokka's catching that. Like, we don't need to make that a big, like, the sheer number of coincidences in this episode, there's no way Sokka's not got that at the end, which he did.
Yes.
And like I say, the knives falling. And then my other nitpick, right, Appa has appeared and been there for like every fight before. And you even have Momo darting around, darting around, potentially able to get Appa. I loved the stuff on the boat. It was great. It was brilliant animation. It was suspenseful. It was a really good, sweet sequence. But was not a little part of you going, why are they needing to get on this boat? Where's Appa? And literally, the second they got on the boat, I went, is this so that he can blow the bison whistle and Appa could appear despite never needing a bison whistle before? Like, and that's obviously exactly what happened.
It's again, this is the script trying to do a lot. Like, so the explanation that the writers would give you, I suspect, is previously they've been physically with Appa already. He's around. He's nearby.
But that's what I mean by Momo could have got him.
Yeah, he could have. But I guess, is Momo going to get him any more or less convoluted than a bison whistle?
Yeah, no, that's fair, I suppose.
I mean, but having to show Momo go off and get Appa and then him coming in to save them, is that any different from Aang blowing the whistle and Appa then coming in to get them? I mean,
we're showing
the question is, why was Appa not with them in the first place?
Yeah,
that's the question, really, because you didn't get the impression that this beach Katara went to was that far from where they were camping.
No.
So where's Appa? Like,
Yeah.
how? Like, it's the initial lack of Appa that's the problem, more so than the fact that they have to come up with a reason to get him in.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
to your Momo point, we see Momo flying about anyway because he's getting chased by that bird. So
Well, at one point he catches this waterbending scroll, right? And he's zipping about with that. There's a very Avengers Endgame Infinity Gauntlet moment where like a few different people hold the scroll at one time and then it gets knocked out of someone's hands and then someone else tries to move with it. Like
and again,
sorry.
I think it probably was the right decision because the boat thing is so exciting and like seeing the pirates steal Fire Dude's boat is very entertaining and all of that stuff. So worth it, yes. But it was a little bit like, oh, we're doing the bison whistle. Okay, cool.
And I guess we've established now that Aang has that. So if there's a story going forward where Aang and Appa get separated, you have a device to be able to bring them back together.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you set it up again. The episode really struggles with the actual story structure. Feels like the hand of the writer is guiding it. That's the difference, isn't it? The stories we've had previously have had a very natural A to B flow, where you totally understand a version of events where this is what unfolds. It feels organic enough that you could imagine that's a real way that those events could have played out. The problem with this episode is it feels like it's extraordinarily improbable any of this would have happened, and the only reason it did is because the writer's hand, the hand of God, was guiding it there. And you should never feel the hand of the writer guiding the characters to make certain decisions. Completely unrelated, but it's why I had such a problem with the movie Rogue One. As much as the ending of that movie is epic and it's got a real vibe of vintage Star Wars, and the filmmaking is very impressive on that final sort of set piece in the third act of that movie. How they get them there, it's a lot of this sort of stuff. It's a lot of characters making decisions that they shouldn't normally make, and it's only to get them to do X and Y. The only reason Katara is jealous in this episode is to get her to separate from Aang and Thing so they can do the bits they do. So everything is sort of there to lead to the next thing, and it doesn't feel very organic. And that, I guess, is really the crux of the problem. And while my initial thoughts were sort of, I was focused on the character stuff, I think that's related. I do think the messiness of Katara's sort of character beats in this episode being a little inconsistent and a little all over the place, but that's to get them to certain places so they can do certain things. And
because all Aang really says to make her feel okay is, let's do it with two waterbenders, which doesn't feel like enough to to resolve the tension between them. And I agree with you. I don't think that tension. I think that tension itself is a bit forced. But again, I can't stress enough. These are nitpick. Like I say, the boat thing. The boat is it's a really exciting episode. Obvious. The highlight of the episode, which neither of us have mentioned yet. The highlight of the episode is very clear. Dan, do you wanna say it?
I feel like I'm gonna get this wrong.
It's obviously the return of Cabbage Man.
I did make a note about that. Yeah,
phenomenal gag.
Yeah, especially because he literally says, like, this place is worse than Omashu, which is where they last bumped into him, which is great.
Just
were you ever expecting to see Cabbage Man again?
No, not at all. And I had such joy on my face when we did.
Yeah, my cabbages. I think a famous actor recently, I can't remember who it was, but there's a reasonably famous actor in like LA or whatever that was on like Instagram or Twitter and said that now they're doing the live action one on Netflix, he's putting himself forward to play Cabbage Man, which I thought was
amazing.
Quite a good gag. I'm gonna look into that if I can and see if I can remember who the hell it was. But yeah, Cabbage Man. It is a great joke.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Although you kind of don't. I'm torn about that because you kind of don't want Cabbage Man to take away. Do you know what I mean? Like with Thor Ragnarok, there was a little bit of the Matt Damon scene kind of took away. I mean, it's all
right.
It's all Eurotrip is remembered for, isn't it, Dan? You know, the Matt Damon cameo.
Yes.
As opposed to the high-quality content in the rest of the film.
I've always found people... It's two things from oh, God, the film Eurotrip. There's two things that people tend to talk about three. People talk about Vinnie Jones, because Vinnie Jones is in that movie, isn't he?
I don't know. I think I've only ever seen the Matt Damon clip.
So Vinnie Jones appears in the movie, and it was one of his first acting roles after football, I think, and people were like, that's hilarious. Matt Damon thing, and then the song Scotty Doesn't Know.
That's kind of the same as number 2, though, isn't it? That is the Matt Damon thing, though.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but that song specifically, I knew about that song before I knew about the context of that song.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, but it's and again, I think like in the show's defense, none of those nitpicks would be too much of an issue if we weren't then dissecting it for 45 minutes.
And if you just watch this episode sort of in the run, you barely notice it. It's like a perfectly fun. It's got some, like I said, I'll get to them in a minute, but it's got some of my favorite jokes from the show in full stop, in it. The action is really good. The pirate characters are super fun. They just about get away with explaining why they've sort of stopped. They manage to justify it in the show and make you not feel like guys are on a timer, which is a problem that might come up potentially in other episodes. But here, at least, straight after the reveal that they're on a bit more of a timer than they thought, they've at least done the right thing. And I'd say most of the time they do justify it. There's just one or two examples. It does have. If we're going to go quickly to Dan's nitpick corner. Did you notice the thing where all three of them got away on the glider?
Yeah, which they before hasn't been an option, but this week was an option. Yeah.
Do you remember in one of the first few episodes of this, we talked about the glider and how it'd come back and annoy me? The gliders come back and annoyed me. In the second episode of this show, Aang tries to fly away, Zuko grabs on, and the two of them is too much weight and they come down. This week, with Katara and Sokka in tow, Aang went not just above the heads of the pirates and sort of glided over them and then landed and then they ran away. No, straight up, straight into the sky.
There's also inconsistencies of when he has it, because he randomly had it on him in that scene,
but he wasn't holding it on the. He wasn't holding it on the pirate ship, I don't think.
Yeah, he didn't have. Well, we better not have had it with him then, because otherwise, why on earth didn't he just escape that way? But yeah.
Oh no! I mean, when they visit it to steal the water scroll the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So how? Come
I don't think he's holding
it's in his pocket. Yeah. So sometimes it's in his pocket and sometimes it's not, and he was presumably sleeping when the pirates captured him this time. That's the kind of thing I'd probably sleep with in my pocket.
But you can't fit that in a pocket. It's a big staff. It doesn't fold down.
Yeah, because hold on, because they escape on Appa. Unless they go back to their camp to pick up their belongings. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or maybe
because
it's on
normally
Appa.
they make a point of unpacking and packing Appa. But
yeah.
If presumably they were woken up to go and went and ran to help Katara, they wouldn't have gone, right, before we get Katara, let's wrap up the camp here. So you're right, that also doesn't make it, unless Appa was just like putting their stuff away. Like just nuzzling the sleeping bag, rolling it up, grabbing it in his mouth and throwing it onto his own back.
And then Appa's like, I brought you your wind thing, and they were like, yeah, never mind the wind thing, buddy. You're fine. You'll help. Like,
no, I brought it, and it's in his mouth, and he drops it into Aang's hands, and it's like all mushed up in it because of his teeth. He's just.
It's definitely
absolutely destroyed it.
It's like when you watch the Marvel movies, and sometimes they have certain powers or strengths, and other times, like I think potentially the most inconsistent character with their powers is definitely Scarlet Witch.
Yes. Well, we talked about this on the podcast recently, but the comics have had that problem with her for years. You know, at one point, Chris, at one point, her powers were explained that she can just affect probability. So it's improbable she could have witchy powers, so she has them. So it's improbable that she'd have some sort of red force field that protects her from things or whatever, or that red energy beam she can shoot out of her hands. So she has it, or she can have it if she wants it.
That's crazy.
It's the dumbest thing.
What other notes, or if there's indeed is any triv? What else you got?
Not almost. There is zero triv this week. I I looked at the page for it and was just like, this is embarrassing. There were two things, and they were just pointing out things that were in the episode. This is the first time Aang is shown waterbending. Great. Thank you, Trev. Why is that there? That is just the content of the episode. Anyway, very quickly though, I do have a couple of other bits that just because I want to bring up, because some of the jokes in this episode blow me away. First of all, when he says, "We got loads of curios," and Aang's like, "What are curios?" And he's like, "We're not entirely sure, but we got them." Fucking love that joke. I also love Aang's Katara's like, "It's all my fault," and Aang's like, "No, Katara, it isn't." And Iroh's just like, "Yeah, it kind of is." It's like Iroh wasn't. Like, Iroh, you're not in this conversation. Love that. The other one that blew my mind was, "Are you so busy fighting that you cannot see your own ship has set sail? We don't have time for your proverbs, uncle. It's no proverb." And then he points and the ship's going in and he goes, "Maybe it should be a proverb."
Yeah, and my favourite bit of that was when they're like, he's like, "Oh no," and then the Fire Nation ship goes by and it's got all the pirates in, who presumably they did notice, so took the time to nick.
That whole scene is hilarious.
Even that, because I think it's Fire Dude himself that is like, he's just trying to turn us against each other, a plan which then 2 seconds later completely works.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd think Fire Dude the entire time would have his eyes on Aang.
Yeah, and what I love as well is the smoke presumably makes that difficult for him, but I love the gag with the smoke as well, where Aang is like, "I can't see anything," and he uses his airbending to blow all the smoke away, and he's like surrounded by pirates, so he pulls the smoke back. It's such a cartoony joke, but in this episode, which is,
it works.
And we haven't really talked about like the positives of this episode, but it's a really fun, rompy episode, and it is full
I enjoyed it. Yeah,
of great jokes. I also enjoy when Sokka is having to clean out Appa's feet, and he goes, "Don't get too comfy, pal. You're doing me next," which I thought was just good. Such a good little gag.
It's also got a shitload of action in, like the fight in the town, the initial fight with the pirates, the fight at the end with the pirates, the whole stuff with the ship going over the edge is awesome. Like, yeah, it's really like I say, nitpicks for both of us, I think, is the key word. It's not criticisms, it's nitpicks.
This episode, when put under a microscope, has flaws, but viewed with your just normally, is a perfectly fine, entertaining piece of television that you wouldn't really question. I think I have the episode that I'm thinking of that's coming up. I have more serious concerns with, but what's funny about that one is that episode is also fun in a lot of ways, and it's frustrating that it's got one particular flaw that I feel very strongly about. And I don't think I'm the only one. I know it tends to rate low amongst fans as well, so I don't think I'm alone necessarily in my thoughts on that episode. So we'll come to that when we come to it. I don't know exactly when it comes up, and I also don't want to double check when it comes up, because I also don't want you to know going into an episode that it is the episode. But I think it's in the next maybe 3. It's very close. So we'll have to, and I'll be interested to know if you spot it when you get to it. Yeah.
Cool.
So, I think that's all I have to say about this one.
I think, again, like, I don't want to repeat myself, but again, the action is brilliant, and there's some really fun stuff. I don't want anyone to think that, it's always more interesting. I think the other problem is, like, when they've done... It's one of those things where the highlights of the episodes, the strength of the episode, is one of those strengths where it's not like there's a lot to analyze. Like, so when it's great character stuff, you can talk about why it's great and the pieces they did it. With this, it's like the jokes are brilliant and there's some really great action scenes. So if it feels like we've weighed more towards the nitpick, it's just because there's not too much to assess other than doing what we've done, which is go, wasn't this funny? Wasn't this great? So yeah,
which is fine, but I wouldn't listen to a podcast of somebody just telling me why something was good.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I do maintain with the information we've got at the beginning is slightly jarring, where you're like, oh, he's
I think that is definitely the closest we came to a full criticism of this episode. I think, as you've said repeatedly now, everything is nitpicks, and therefore please don't take it as us like really coming down on this episode or anything. It's just weird little things that when you look close, make this episode very imperfect. But
so that's
the only thing that really could affect it, I think, and I would totally understand somebody having a real problem with is that first, and that's the closest to a legit criticism we have, which is that point about how it might undermine the idea that Aang's only got till next summer to learn all the waterbending, because if you don't know that there's a difference between being able to skateboard and kickflip, as my analogy from the beginning goes, then it just seems like he can waterbend now. Great, he can do it all. But as you will see, that there's a lot more to any of these skills than just the base level moving them. But again, you don't know that yet, so it's a very reasonable criticism, I think.
So just very quickly before we go then, now that we're done with the Avatar talk, Dan, is there, because when in EastEnders, which for those in the US that don't
Christ.
know,
I thought we've done it. It's been tight. We tangented it at the beginning, but we got it back on track.
It's just quick. It's just quick. EastEnders is a British soap opera, so sort of Days of Our Lives thing. Yep. Little Mo hit Trevor around the head with a frying pan, and I think killed him. And at one point, someone hit someone around the head with an ashtray and killed them. Now, those things have a fair amount of surface area. Now, obviously, there's not a lot of surface, so you kind of use the logic of maybe they hit the temple or something in exactly the right spot. Now, obviously, it's a big cup of tea, but that seems less likely with the cup. But it's heavy enough to kill them, but also heavy enough for you to pick up. Is there maybe also like poison in the tea? What was your logic on that?
It's the base of the cup is so the reason I think an ashtray would successfully take someone out is the glass on a glass ashtray is thick, isn't it? Really thick. Like it won't necessarily it'll crack, but it won't shatter. I think a thin, smaller cup would just shatter, and therefore you wouldn't have the same impact. But this cup is so big that I think the base of it is a real. I can't believe we're having this conversation, but the base of the cup has to be really strong to support the structure of it and the weight of the water in which it holds.
But hopefully this is because, hopefully regular listeners will know this. Dad and I don't ever have this kind of discussion. So you're talking cartoon Home Alone style violence here. You're not actually suggesting you're going to kill someone with your big old cup of tea.
No, I'm not suggesting I'm going to. I'm suggesting I could, though.
You could, right? Yeah.
I think it's physically possible if you hit someone hard with this cup because it's so big that you would do a lot of damage because of the weightiness of the base piece of this ceramic.
Right. Okay.
It's a heavy cup. It's a big cup.
Big cup of tea. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
It's giant.
Yeah. Huge cup of tea.
It's bigger. It's taller than my hand. Is it? Yeah, it's about the same height as my hand.
Really?
It's huge, dude. I'm telling you, this cup is massive. You've
got big
seen
hands?
these cups, though, right? You've seen these cups before. I've got the two giant
it's
ones.
certainly, but I think it's certainly not bigger than my hand. But I think
I can put my fist in this cup.
How big are your hands, though?
I don't know.
I don't think you've got massive hands, have you?
I feel like I have average hands. I feel like my
whereas
hands are
I
in
think
proportion. I don't feel like I've got particularly small hands, but I also don't feel because if I had small hands, Chris, I wouldn't often have tons of typos in my text because of my big dobby fingers. And I also, if I had really small hands,
there's a big difference, buddy, between big hands and fat fingers. Okay,
right. And on that note,
let's not confuse the two.
I don't have the strength for this, Chris. It's a Monday morning, mate. What are you doing to me?
Sorry.
Fucking hell. Right, I tell you what, we'll end it there. Thank you, everyone, for listening so much. As always, if you want to hear next week's episode now and hear more about my fucking cup, then you can head over to the Patreon if you're listening to us on the platforms.
We're recording next week's episode close enough to this one that there's a possibility the cup's coming up again.
Jesus. Oh, great.
Sometimes,
guys, teasing a running joke for you, a cup. No,
but have you found that sometimes with this, like we'll have a little running joke in it. Well, with all the podcasts, really. Sometimes there'll be a running joke within the episode, and people will probably go, "That'll be coming up again," and then we just happen. The audience won't notice, but we won't happen to record for like a week and a half, so that running joke disappears. I think the running jokes that last are the ones that come up a lot because we happen to have recorded a series of episodes close to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, or there's something that physically keeps happening. So we had a spurt of recording on Wednesdays, which seemed to be the days the gardener comes and mows the fucking lawn out here.
Yeah,
so the lawnmower man thing was because we kept recording on Wednesdays. Anyway, so come back next week if you want to hear that joyous. I think we're literally recording that episode tomorrow, so I suspect the cup will return for those of you excited about that running joke. Jesus. Yeah. But if you want to hear that
to
right
join
now,
Patreon, isn't it?
Yeah, I tell you what, forget us discussing the next episode of this show. You're all coming back for the cup. But Jesus, with that in mind, yeah, if you want to hear it now, you can. If you're not already on the Patreon, for as little as $1 a month, then it's available. And for those of you who are already on the Patreon, sorry, you've got to wait a week for that joy. But there you go. You can also get us obviously on all the usual places. You can subscribe and like and review. And I've probably already said this on previous episodes of this, but that's really important for a new podcast. So please make sure you do that. Most platforms have a new and noteworthy section, and it can be a really good way for new podcasts to gain a lot of traction very quickly. So we would appreciate if you're enjoying this that you do that. Although I would understand after this episode that might not be the case.
And again, for those celebrating, hope you either have or had a good Christmas.
Yeah, and obviously, have we mentioned on this podcast yet that our plan is to take breaks between seasons? It's occurred to me that we haven't actually. I don't think we've said that, have we?
Not. No, possibly not.
So just to clarify for people, so expectations are set now. When we get to the end of season 1, we're going to be taking a good couple months off and then coming back. The reason being, we want to go back to our other podcast, Rewind Reviews, where we go back and review old movies. So we're going to stop this for a couple months, do a bunch of episodes of that, then come back to this. And then we'll do that between every season. So
but aren't we starting with a really awful movie? Obviously, we're not there for like another 12 weeks, but aren't we starting with a really awful movie that you've chosen?
Yes, we're starting with a movie called Joe's Apartment, which was the first attempt for MTV to do a movie. And I think the tagline is sex, bugs, and rock and roll. It's one of the worst movies I ever enjoyed, and I because as a kid, we'll talk about it, but yeah, as a kid, that movie just appealed to the child. Like, even though it's a movie not aimed at children at all, I probably shouldn't have seen it. Is what I'm getting at. But yeah, it's weird because it's a movie with jokes that are very inappropriate for a young age, but it's a movie totally will only be found funny by children. That's what's amazing about that movie. Anyway, so yeah, that's gonna be that's my punishment for Chris, because he made me watch. What was the film you made me watch that I hated? The Girl Next Door.
Yeah, but it's a late, because I'm going to get you back for this as well, though. So it's a late punishment. Yeah.
Well, no, because you did it at the first episode of the previous series, so I did it at the first episode of this series. That was my logic. Right. So yeah, I'm excited for that. So yeah, and if you want to check out our other series of that Rewind Reviews, we've done oh god, I can never remember all the movies we've done. We've done
Toy Story, The Girl Next Door. We did all 3 Back to the Futures.
Yeah,
we've done Short Circuit. We've done RoboCop.
Gremlins.
We've done Gremlins. We did in a separate podcast. We did all 3 Honey I Shrunk the Kid movies, the ride and the TV show. They're all on YouTube. Trying to think. Oh, The Snowman. Since it's Christmas, we did an episode on that.
Oh yeah, we did 2 Christmas episodes of that last year. We did The Snowman and we did Gremlins. So you can get back. Oh yeah, Lady and the Tramp. I've got the list up here finally. Little Shop of Horrors, Goofy Movie, Shawshank Redemption, Bill and Ted. Yeah, we had a ton of fun. We've done like 20 of them so far, 21 of them I think. And we're gonna do another set of sort of maybe 8 or 9 before we come back to this, because I want to try and get it so the seasons are 10 episodes long again. Because the last one, because we ended on a trilogy, sort of ended up being a bit awkward. But yeah, and at some point, some teasers. There's a bunch of movies I'm really excited for us to talk about on there. So there you go. That's all on the YouTube channel and on all your usual audio platforms like Spotify and Apple and iTunes and Amazon. All that jazz. So there you go. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry this episode wasn't quite as focused as the others. If you enjoyed that, I don't know, we'll try and find a better balance going forward. But yeah, thanks very much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll speak to you guys in a week's time when we discuss Jet.